Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my January wrap up. This is definitely going to be a short one, as you'll see in a second, but hopefully you enjoy. If you do, make sure to check out my TikTok. It's BooksWithBethx, which I'll put the handle up on here. And yeah, basically I just do the same videos in a short form, as well as some extra ones that you might find interesting. So yeah, follow me on there and we shall begin. So there's only one word I can use to describe this month, and it is Tolkien. I've basically reread two books that I read back in, I believe, 2016, 2017, which I then had to stop reading the series because I was back at university and therefore didn't have the time to read them, and then I was unable to get some copies of them. For Christmas I asked my other half to get me some beautiful, almost collector's edition copies of these books, and actually I'll show you. That one down. I'll show you what they sort of look like. So here's the Hobbit. See there? And it's just beautiful. You've got Bilbo there, and then Smaug on the back. And the maps are just. I can show you that. There's two versions of this map as well. That's the one that was created by Thorin's father, I believe, and then this one. Oh, on there. So, oh, and it also has pictures throughout as well, which I'll see if I can find them. I'm assuming that's at Bilbo's house for the hobbits around. So, yeah, I read these two. Well, I've almost finished Fellowship of the Ring, which I'll discuss in a little bit, but yeah, the Hobbit we'll start with. So, despite only reading, or almost have read, two books, it started really well this month. Obviously I started with The Hobbit. I started this on the 1st of January, so breaking the new year strong. And it only took me 2 days to read. It is about 300 pages, so it is only 100 pages shorter than Fellowship of the Ring. But yeah, as this one is a children's story compared to the Fellowship, so it is quite a lot easier to read. There's less descriptions, there's a lot of singing. You can almost, if this was an audiobook, I'm sure the majority of it will be like a musical. So this follows Bilbo Baggins, who is a hobbit, and he is the namesake of the book, and he is a homebody. He loves his creature comforts at home, he loves sitting by the fire, he loves hosting parties, he likes eating. I believe he has at least 5 courses a day, which sounds like the life to me. That's how I'd love to be living, and just relaxing, and yeah. I believe he's around 50 in this, but obviously in Tolkien's world, characters age very differently, so elves can live for a very, very, very long time. Hobbits usually live to around 100, I believe, but or probably even longer, they hit adulthood when they turn 35, which is something I learnt from reading the Fellowship. But yeah, he likes his creature comforts, he doesn't want to go on adventures, he just wants to chill and relax at home. Until one day Gandalf shows up, and everyone knows who Gandalf is if you've watched Lord of the Rings. He's a wizard. And he tells Bilbo he's got a quest for him, which Bilbo initially rejects because, well, why would he want to go on a quest and risk his life? Until 13 dwarves show up the next day for a dinner party, which Bilbo was not aware of. And it is quite comical, and if you've seen the film you'll know what I mean, but they all just turn up and he's like, what on earth is happening? And he's like a typical British person, he's just letting them come in because he's just like, I can't say no to these people, but they keep turning up until Thorin turns up, who is the leader of the Lonely Mountain, which we then learn that the quest is for the dwarves to take back their home mountain of the Lonely Mountain, which was taken over a few, probably 100 odd years ago, by a dragon called Smaug. And that's where the story begins. So the Hobbit is dragged along with them as a thief. He needs to go in and steal a gem called the Oakenstone, which will then make Thorin the leader of the castle, the mountain again. So this is a beautiful, incredible book. I feel like it's a lot less descriptive than the Fellowship so far, but you know exactly what's happening at all times. It's very fast paced, I find, as well, very action driven. Obviously they're aiming for an endpoint, which is to get to the Lonely Mountain. And yeah, it can also be read as a standalone, which I know that the events of this lead into what happens with the Fellowship of the Ring and the rest of the books. But you could actually read this as a standalone if you didn't want to read the rest of the series, and as I say, it won't take you too long to read. It's quite varied as well. You get adventure, you get battles, you get trolls, you get talking eagles that fly them around the place, you get a shapeshifter that turns into a bear, you get wolves, you get Smaug the dragon, you get humans, you get elves, you get Gollum, which, yeah, we won't explain that. And goblins. Goblins are very key. And there's also a battle of the 5 armies at the end of the book. So staying with typical Lord of the Rings fashion, there is a huge battle at the end, of course. I will add, there is no orcs in this. They are mentioned, but there's no orcs in this. So I know the films have the orcs. They also have a love story, which also is not in this. My only, not gripe, but the only downside of this is that you've got 13 dwarves to get to know, and you don't really get to know any of them other than Thorin in much of a capacity. Yeah, there's not. You just know that they're there. You know a couple of brothers. You know one is, well, you eventually learn that one is Gimli's father. But yeah, there's not really too much character development in this other than Bilbo, really, and maybe a bit with Gandalf. But it is a good story nonetheless. It also is quite similar to the film, but I would still recommend reading this because there are bits that happen in this which don't happen in the films. Yeah, definitely recommend it. 4 stars. Now on to the second book I've almost read this month, but I will count it because I am hopefully going to finish it in the next couple of days, is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the first one in the Lord of the Rings series. And I will show you the beautiful, you see that? So you've got, I believe that's Rivendell. And then you get the trolls, which may or may not have featured in The Hobbit, so hint at that. I don't believe they're even in the films as far as I remember. And I will also show you the map in this one, because it is, in these books it is slightly different to the Hobbit one, which was more of a drawing by someone. You can see it's very detailed. You can almost follow them along the journey in the book. So I don't think anyone really needs much of an explanation for this, but this follows, well, it starts with Bilbo once again, actually, strangely enough. He has, in his previous adventure, found a ring, and all we know by that point is that the ring can make you invisible. And Gandalf visits him on his 130th birthday, something like that, and tells him to give up the ring to Frodo. Frodo, again, doesn't have any idea what it does other than it turns you invisible. Gandalf disappears off for a few years, comes back when Frodo's about 50 by that point, and tells him it is the one true ring of the Dark Lord, aka Sauron. And Sauron will do anything he can to get a hold of this ring, so it needs to be destroyed. And that's where the journey begins. Frodo is heading off to Mount Doom, which is down in Mordor, which it is down here. So he needs to travel from around here somewhere, Hobbiton, around here somewhere, to down here, which, yeah, if anyone knows the story, you know what happens next. He heads off with 3 other hobbits, Sam, who everyone knows, and he's played by Sean Astin, obviously, in the films, Merry and Pippin, and they head off on their adventure, and along the way they meet Tom Bombadil, who I will mention because I know a lot of people were very upset that he wasn't in the films. He meets, obviously, Aragorn, who's just Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf comes along at some point for the ride. Yeah, it's basically another adventure story of a lot of battles, although this one so far is quite light on the battles other than in a few select places, but it's not quite like the Battle of the 5 Armies yet, but I know that will be coming in the next book. But yeah, so far it's very good. Probably we'll say it's a 4-star for now. It's a lot slower to read. It's only 400 pages longer than The Hobbit, but so far it's taken me around 20 to 21 days, 22 days to read. So it is a lot, quite a lot slower to read. It's very descriptive. It's almost like you can follow them on their journey along the map. I also explained to one of my friends that it's pretty much like they walked for 1 metre past the hedgerow towards the Wakewater. They crossed the Wakewater at this point and then waded for about 2 metres. And then off they turned left past the Wakewater, past the goats in the fields. And it is very good, but I think the descriptiveness is the reason why a lot of people find it difficult to read. But it is beautiful, and I would recommend reading it. It does follow the film quite closely. My favourite part was reading Fly You Fools, although actually that was something I pointed out to my other half. So in the film, Gandalf yells, "You shall not pass," but in the book he actually says, "You can't pass," I believe. I have to find it now. Yeah, I just found it. He says, "You cannot pass," rather than "You shall not pass," which, to be fair, "shall not pass" works better than "cannot," but he does still say "Fly You Fools," so yeah. The film is relatively, it's very similar to the book, I'd say, but I would still read it. There's bits that have missed out. There's a part where the hobbits are eaten by a tree, just an oak tree decides to eat them as they're having a nap. And there's other elves in there that aren't in the film. We haven't really seen much of, what's her name? The female elf that ends up with Aragorn. We've seen her in passing, and she's the most beautiful elf that anyone's ever seen, of course. But yeah, I'd recommend everyone reading this. Just be warned that it can take quite a long time. It takes me about an hour to read 20 pages, which is a lot of time when the only time I have to read is before I go to sleep most days, and that's only about an hour. So, but yeah, I would give this 4 stars at least at the minute, if not 4.5, but we'll see how it ends for the last 15%. So that is it for my January wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully my February wrap-up will be a lot longer and I'll have read quite a few more books. If you've missed it, please go watch my February TBR, which I have already uploaded. It'll be in the first video on this channel and I'll link it here. But other than that, thank you for watching. Subscribe, follow my TikTok as well if you'd like to see any more of me, and yeah, I'll see you later.